Good morning, Bethel. And here we are. It's another day and another episode of Talking Bible here with the Brandons. And if you remember, we've been taking some time with some of the minor prophets here this week. And just because we call them minor prophets doesn't mean that they're less than or
Why are they called minor prophets?
well, because we don't their books aren't that big. So that's the primary reason
shorter.
there. Yeah. So and oftentimes overlooked, just to be honest with you.
They're kind of in the pages that are stuck together section of your Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not. And I think.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that they're often overlooked? It's like, yeah, the major prophets, the Isaiahs and the Jeremiahs, the Daniels. I mean, that
Daniel is end time stuff,
right?
And Lion's Den and Fiery Furnace. It's just kind of some neat
That's some
stories
fun stuff,
there.
yeah.
And then Isaiah is just quoted big time in the New Testament.
Yeah, a lot of Jesus in Isaiah.
It is. And then Jeremiah, Ezekiel are not as quoted or
Sure.
looked at, but there are there's a few more things there that, if you read your Bible, you'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
I think the minor prophets, they're not read as much, at least some of them, because I think some of them are a little stranger in some cases. Some of the language and some of them is kind of cryptic.
Sure.
And there's not as many famous, you want to call it
Stories,
famous. Or quotes. There are some, Joel's quoted in Acts chapter 2, and Micah 5 is quoted in Matthew's gospel. So there are, it's just not as many.
Right.
So.
I know someone is a serious Bible heavyweight if they start quoting some minor prophets on me.
That's right.
If they draw my attention to one of these books here, and
That's right.
and today we find ourselves in Hosea, and Hosea is really it's a book about the unfaithfulness of God's people, essentially.
Yeah.
And man, out of all the prophets, like God calls and, how he wants them to do things. Hosea, this is a tough job here,
Do you think Hosea was an actual person?
I do.
I mean, do you think it was an actual prostitute that God called him to marry?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. Do a lot of people think that?
There are some scholars who say that Hosea's wife was just figurative. So if you don't know the story, God calls Hosea to marry a prostitute who is unfaithful to him and will be unfaithful to him and is unfaithful to him.
That's a tough pill to swallow there.
No kidding.
It's like, come on, God.
And he's using Hosea's marriage as a object lesson, illustration, whatever, about Israel's unfaithfulness. And so not introduces, it's all through the Old Testament New Testament, this idea of spiritual prostitution, spiritual adultery, or harlotry, or whoredom, actually. And I can remember people hearing that one time, and when this idea of a spiritual harlot, and it shocked them. And yet it's all through the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. It's a theme.
Yeah.
So
go take yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. A lot of whoredom going on here.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a word that was used there, and it's meant to feel. You're meant to feel that, just the stark nature of that.
It's an ugly thing.
It is. But what is he trying to say? He's trying to say that when God's people turn to another god or turn to an idol, it is like you are committing adultery. It is like cheating on God.
How so, Brandon?
Well, you're trusting in that thing. You're looking to that thing. Well, first of all, God is presented as a husband. Mm-hmm. So the scriptures, you will see in the scriptures, in the Old Testament, God is presented as a husband to Israel. And then in the New Testament, right, Jesus is the husband, the bridegroom of the church. And it's a covenant relationship, right? God is by blood. Jesus' blood is a covenant relationship between God and his people, like a marriage covenant, and is a betrothal to be faithful to each other.
Right.
And God always keeps that. And we are to keep that oath as well, that covenant of not cheating on him by chasing after other idols or other gods, which is what we tend to do.
Right.
We look to those things to give us protection, love, significance, pleasure, provision, whatever, and God calls that it's as though you were committing adultery.
Yeah, it's really a violation, like the first command, not to have any other gods.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Because God is a jealous God, as a jealous husband would be, and we shouldn't think of God as kind of this. Whenever we think of like the jealous husband or whatever, it always has this negative connotation behind it.
Not that jealous,
right? Not this insecure kind of overbearing, But ultimately, God, He wants what is best for us, and ultimately,
is it best for your wife to cheat on you and run around chasing after other men?
Certainly not. Certainly not. It will not go well for her in the land.
Well, not just because it like makes you mad or angry,
right?
But wouldn't that disrupt the raising of your kids?
Absolutely. It would not be beneficial for her. It would not be beneficial for
society.
No,
you can't build a society,
whole, right?
Right?
Or children. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and you see that all throughout. Just not the Old Testament, but the history of humanity. Anytime that we chase after idols and we make those pursuits our highest goal outside of God, then it ends in disaster every time.
Yeah, it is the big issue of the Bible. I don't know that people always understand that or not or get it, but idolatry is the issue that is having to be dealt with in the Scriptures. It's the main sin we are prone to, and that's it's what the prophets are always trying to address.
Right.
Always calling the people away from idolatry. It's Romans chapter 1. It's what Paul is describing when we exchange the Creator for created things. And I always use the illustration that this is like. Tracy hates this illustration, but it would be like her leaving me for a 400-pound man who sits on the couch, overweight, gross, pimples, body odor, never bathes, never works, abuses her. I mean, just think of the most disgusting man you could find physically, mentally, in every way. And she leaves me, even though I'm not perfect, but she leaves me for him. Now, assuming I am the perfect husband.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, this is the comparison.
That's right.
So first of all, it's the dishonoring of me. She was saying to me,
"You're not enough.
You're not enough," and then she's saying to this other guy who hurts her that he is, and so it's a dishonoring of me, and it's just foolish and dangerous and bad for her. And this is what idolatry is. I put down like God reminds them that idolatry, chapter 2, verse 8. And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil, and who lavished on her silver and gold, which they used for Baal, a false god. So God's reminding them that idolatry is when you take all the spiritual goodies or created goodies that God gives you, James chapter 1, and then every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord. And you take that, and then you actually cheat on God with them, which is why in James chapter 4, right after James says, you have not because you ask not, or you ask with the wrong motives to spend it on what you want, he says, you adulterous people. And what he's saying is there is spiritual adultery is like you going to your husband and saying, please give me $50 so that I can go out on the street and hire a male prostitute. So it's bad enough that you go cheat, but you just use the money.
Right.
You just ask for the money.
Your good husband,
right.
provided for you.
And that's a picture of idolatry for us.
Yeah.
That's the prodigal son. He took the inheritance and he chased after a wanton lifestyle with the money he got from his father. So yeah, it's rooted in gratitude and a lack of distrust. I put down. It's looking to those things that hurt you, and they don't love you; they take from you. But the good news here's the good news of Hosea is God does redeem and restore, and He takes and has mercy on Israel, as He says. He has mercy on His people. Eventually, He brings them back. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean. I just highlighted, kind of what you were just talking about there, like Hosea redeems his wife right there in verse 1, chapter 3. It says, the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the children of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love cakes of raisins. Don't know what kind of food that is.
Yeah, it was a food they used in idol worship.
Is that right? I was wondering about that. I was like, what were they, like Little Debbie's here? What's going on here?
Something like that.
But the idea there is, God commands Hosea to redeem his wife, who was an adulteress and unfaithful bride. And really, the story of Hosea is the story of us, the story of how we ourselves, the church, the bride of Christ, we have been unfaithful to God, and throughout our lives, we are unfaithful to God. Whenever we enter into sin, whenever we chase after idols, things that we think that will bring us joy, happiness, pleasure outside of something that God has permitted us to have, that is idolatry. And I just put, is this not what God does for us? We are a people unworthy of His love, but yet He cleanses us, redeems us, and takes His church to be His bride. In light of that, that thankfulness, how we should love Him in return. And I think that's what He wants for us. It's the primary commandment: love the Lord your God.
And He calls to us. This is a God that is good and loving. I love at the end, toward the end of the book of Hosea, chapter 11. There's a section where He says, how can I give you up, O Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? How can I make you like? And He names some countries that were forsaken. And then He says this, my heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my burning anger. I will not destroy Ephraim. For I'm God and not a man, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. What would a jealous husband do to his wife who constantly cheated on him? And typically in history that doesn't go well. And yet, what does the Bible say? God comes with love and compassion and tenderness, and His heart recoils within Him, and He wants to woo back His bride and bring her back. So it's just a good word there of tenderness and love for us. So
good word to end on there, Bethel.
There it is.
So hope you enjoyed today, and tomorrow, if you're into the minor prophets, and if that's your kind of thing, and I hope it is, then we've got a little Amos action going down there. So Amos chapter 1, verse 1, and then just chapter 9. So
that's it.
Want you to get the thesis statement up front, and then we get into some real meat there in chapter 9. But that's where we'll be tomorrow. So read ahead for us, and we'll see y'all then.